All right, guys, Anton here with Austin Historical Weapons Guild. Again, still at our home in Vigilante here in Austin. I don't know if everyone's me, but we wrapped up the Jude Liu read through Monday. There's some things in there that I kind of want to tie across some other systems, and especially today I want to kind of focus on the windings. I kind of hinted at this in the video Monday, but for the longest time, the windings were super vague for me. Like I understood the concept of you have your hanger positions, which is your ox and your flug, and from each of those positions you have two winds, but that's kind of as much as I got. It didn't really follow through the same way. And with last night's read through, on top of everything else I've done, it kind of makes a lot of sense. And I'm hoping I can kind of condense that across systems, make things make a little bit more sense, make seem a little bit more applicable to, I mean, obviously longsword, but fighting in general. And at this point, and no surprise to myself at least, starting with rapier seems to be a great position to kind of start to make sense of how this works, how this plays out. With rapier, at least under Fabris, that he gives us very clear ideas of inside and outside. And this doesn't work throughout as cleanly as I'd like, but it's a good starting point to kind of start to understand where things are coming from, what the goals are, what the intentions are, as we sort of move through and into this as a theory. The biggest thing, the kind of starting takeaway is going to be that when you line up with your opponent, they can either be inside your weapon or outside your weapon. And with Fabris, that idea of inside is going to be if they are, I hate to self-referential, but if they're inside your blade. If we're lined up so that my blade is pointing at the other person, their blade is pointing at me, and our swords would not cross if we walked and stabbed each other, that's inside. If the opposite is true, if my sword is between his blade and my body, that's outside. And that's really kind of simple, lazy definition of what we're looking for when we're talking about inside and outside, right? If we're inside, I don't want to say I have a much stronger character because if he's outside, it's just easy to stab me. But I really need to make sure that I have control of that weapon. I can start isolating it and moving through it. Where if we're outside, there's a kind of heavy implication that if I'm doing everything right, my sword's always in the way of his, and there's no way they can make that line through to attack me. So there's a inherent extra risk of, implied risk of being inside, where you need to work to drive to control and working from there. Going through the windings, Liu opens up with working from right ox. Right ox is definitely setting up for an inside bind, right? If I'm here, the cut's coming in to my left side, I need to turn across my body, closing off that inside line and making my attack. They then gives us options where if they push out, I can react and do other things and create a second wind and kind of working through those positions, through those options. And really playing with it again Monday night kind of drove home how simple, intuitive it really should be, at least as someone who's been fencing for now almost 7 years. The play is described in Longsword is an incredibly simple, incredibly common rapier play that I've seen and done countless times. Playing that, I can't even tell you offhand what source, what manuscript, what reference the play is. But at its core, regardless of weapon I'm using, system I'm using, first step is I'm going to catch their sword with my strong, lunging in my attack. And if I'm all fancy right, this is the first wind from longsword. Specifically, if you want to look at flug, it's even better. I start low, I come across, I catch, I'm still below my shoulders, I'm still in my low hanger. I can now drive in, make my attack. If they set this attack aside, which I'll emulate by stepping to my left so I'm no longer in line with my target, all I'm going to do is go back to my right side, turn which side of my blade is making contact, and drive through again. And that's, at its core, at its simplest, is the windings we see in longsword, which, again, Fabris, I think part of rule 1 is kind of working from this position, where I come up, I'm attacking the other person. I'm making my attack. If they go to push my blade off of line, off of center, because I've already gotten control. We're already assumed from rule 1, I'm on line, I'm on target, I'm about to stab the other person. This sets up. This is already, the first wind has already happened outside of engagement, outside of position. So now I can make my attack. As they push out, I turn into second as their blade moves. And now I just keep walking through and I finish my action, making my wound. And that is mechanically identical to the winding from your lower openings in longsword. And really, that kind of idea, that kind of understanding of how these winds work, how they're applied, and how we can more easily utilize them was kind of jarring in simplicity after all the other layers of everything else we kind of worked with. So grabbing a longsword briefly so I can kind of highlight what I'm talking about, what that means. I'm going to raise this up a little bit. All right, so rigging this up to make this a little more realistic for a longsword engagement, for a higher attack coming through, the same thing is going to happen. We start in our left hanger, or right hanger, right ox. I'm going to coming across, bring my false edge through the blade, trying to line up my thrust. If they set this aside hard, all I need to do is rotate to my long edge, come back to my right side, and now I have a clear, easy, safe attack working through my openings. More relevantly, tying down to the low guard, low positions, staying below my shoulder now. I come in, starting in right flug, bring across my long edge this time because I've changed positions. As I press off again, I go to my false edge and wind out and drive through. And that last motion is literally what we just did with rapier. We start to the outside, or to the inside to our right side, come across with a long edge, drive and attack. If that doesn't work, they set us off. We rotate to the back edge of the blade and drive through the same way. And it's that same principal motion, that dynamic that really sets up these winds, really sets up these deeper positions and makes these transitions incredibly fluid, incredibly dynamic, and incredibly powerful in the context of longsword work instead of your wind work. The difference understanding for me is that this is not this kind of wind here. I know I've always done it. I'm here, and then I'd wind across like this to try to make that position come out. And it's not about that drop. It's not about throwing this strike to the opposite side. The goal here is I'm always attacking that same side. So if I come in to the right, as Meiko Express, it's to the right as well. And that kind of nuance, that kind of shift in awareness, shift in focus is so easy and obvious when you're working with the rapier. In rapier, we don't have the 3 wounders. We're not really trying to do multiple actions and multiple pressings, but I can do the same exact thing from high with my rapier. I can come in with my false edge. I don't know why I would do this with rapier, but I can come with that false edge, make that high displacement here, pressing through. If this needs to turn around, staying high, I just turn this over, working my options, working my pressure through there. It's not nearly as comfortable as with the rapier. It's a one-handed weapon. I don't have the leverage I get. I don't have the power I get from the longsword. But we can very easily take these same applications, same concepts, and work them through. With that in mind, we can also start looking at the longsword and treat those outside binds the same way we would. So starting in left ox, we'd come in here. This time we'd wind in with our long edge, right? And this would make our thrust, pressing in from here. If this got set off, we'd go to the false edge and drive through. If we're in our low guards here, this time I'd come across with my false edge, pressing out, getting my thrust in line. Then I'd want to, with pressure, wind my long edge in and press through and kind of work that angle. And it's this kind of reverse application I really wanted to play with and show about tonight of, again, I feel like most people with rapier have always done this drill where you catch here, as I set off hard, you turn out and walk through. But I've never really, again, I haven't done a whole lot of rapier. Never really seen that drill mirrored, right? There's never kind of that you come into the outside and if they press off, you wind under with force. And I'm not sure why that is. I said maybe it's just lack of exposure, lack of knowledge in the full study of rapier concepts, rapier techniques. Maybe there's a better solution to this kind of position. Or maybe they're just going to assume that if you get this sort of outside locked position, they're not going to be setting off the same way. I can't answer that. But I can say that very easily, I can press out. And once I have this position, if they really set that off, this wind around 2 seconds, getting that back edge on, working from there, feels very strong, feels very effective, and is a very simple opening practice to start of kickstart kind of rapier study, especially if you're coming from longsword, like I know a lot of people wind up doing with rapier. Just a very simple way to take those longsword skills, longsword habits, longsword techniques, start applying them over to rapier. And just really looking at this idea that I can come from here. And yes, that's the easy one, but as I move, if they move, I can turn that across, right? If they, let me angle my head a little bit more. Right, so if I've lost my line here, I can just press out to fourth and make my attack drive through just the same way as you would anywhere else. And I feel like this is mostly just glossed over the rapier. There's lots and lots of nuance and options of things that can happen, can change. And again, I'm projecting into this one that they're really just showing a broad swath of options, a broad swath of intentions, and that they're not going to waste the ink, the time, the carving to show everything from both sides, from multiple angles. The theory is going to be that if you understand it one way, you should be able to do it the other way. And especially looking at Fabris, he had a school system for it. It wasn't going to be, okay, here's every single play, every single concept. It's really just taking the ideas we get into plates and expanding them to be more useful, to be more applicable and everything. Fabris kind of, I mean, I assume fairly tongue-in-cheek at the end of his book says, like, cool, you've got a rapier, they've got a pole weapon. Well, you just go like this and everything we've taught you, you should be able to figure this out. I'm not going to waste my time, I'm not going to sell your intelligence. You should know this by now. You should be able to beat the pole arm with your rapier. It's not a problem. So with that in mind, with that highlighting it especially, I don't think anyone's going out saying this, so this shouldn't be new or novel, but just emphasizing that this option, this variation, right, working this outside bind, doing the same thing, is totally valid, is totally applicable. It falls within Fabrice's system. It's highlighting concepts and things we see. We just don't have this exact iteration of these things kind of played out. And I think that kind of ties together why I think looking at these weapons holistically, looking at concepts and systems and being able to tie things together is not wrong, but actually critical to developing a good sense of how we should be fighting with these things. So that's kind of it for tonight. Not a whole lot, as I said. We're definitely winding down for the holidays. We will be releasing Fabrice videos on Friday and maybe a bonus one next week as well. But no more live videos until the new year. So I hope everyone has a safe holiday, enjoy some downtime, gets amazing new toys and shiny things under their trees. And otherwise, I'll see everyone again in the new year. As always, if there's comments, questions, please feel free to reach out, comment below, email us, Facebook. We have a new Discord channel. Otherwise, if there's something you want to see that I haven't talked about yet, definitely at the point where I need input, I need ideas. We have a few things lining up for January, but hopefully we'll be able to get those out and announced and get some more input for those. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Happy holidays, and we'll see you guys next year.